G'day viewers, it's Friday, which means it's time for Totally Fucked Up Friday. And how was your week this week? You know what? I'm going to lay a bet it wasn't as totally fucked up as British Prime Minister Theresa May's week. For those of you who don't know or possibly don't understand UK politics, Theresa May called a snap election recently, years ahead of schedule. She can do that. It's not unprecedented, but it's more than a tad cynical, because she believed all the surveys that said, hey, we're heaps more popular than our Labour opposition. I have a majority now, but if I have an election and get a bigger majority and like crush Labour, symbolically I will have been empowered to do almost anything. So getting rid of the National Health Service, pushing ahead with Brexit, killing everyone poor, all things she wants to do, she'd have in her mind the authority to do it. And all the surveys told her she was right, but then over the life of the election campaign, it started to come apart a bit. Jeremy Corbyn, who's like an old school lefty, he started to get more popular because, heaven forbid, actually looking after people appealed to a lot of people. Particularly, he resonated with a lot of younger voters who, it seems, had a big impact on the election. And what has ended up happening is, well, it's not a clear win for anyone, because the Tories suffered quite badly. Theresa May's party lost their majority. They're still the single biggest party, but they lost their majority in the Parliament. Now, Labour have considerably fewer seats than the Tories, so they, can't form a government. But the way it works, for those who don't understand the Westminster system, if you have less than a majority, but you have some either explicit coalition or at least an agreement with a minor party who says, we're going to support you as a minority government, then you can form a government. And that's the situation the Tories find themselves in now. Their key supporter is going to be a conservative unionist group from Ireland, and that will give them enough support to theoretically stay on board and stay in government, but as a minority. Now, here's the big thing in that. See, even when you have a majority in a parliamentary system, you have to have pretty strong control over your own party, because you have to get all your parliamentarians to vote for what you want. And sometimes there are divisions within a party and they don't. So now Theresa May not only has to have all of her MPs vote along the line she wants, she also has to have around 10 other people who aren't in her party give explicit support, or she can't pass bills she wants to. And now, here's a spoiler alert. There's a lot of divisions in her own party, particularly on the topic of Brexit. There are different people who have different views on whether it should have happened, how extreme it should be, and all of these things. So now, with her going into negotiations with the EU on exactly how England will pull out of the European Union, she's in a much, much, much weaker position. The EU could be emboldened to put really strict conditions and be really quite punishing to the UK. Say, okay, well, you know what? You were in the EU and you had these commitments. You basically, in legal terms, signed contracts to say you were going to commit to certain things. If you pull out, there are penalties. So I don't know, the EU, if they're in a bad mood, they might say, okay, you can leave the EU if you pay a £10 trillion penalty, or every person in England has to stand on one leg on Saturdays, hop up and down and say, I'm a silly sausage, I'm a silly sausage, I'm a silly sausage. I'm not saying they will do that, I'm saying they could. And she's in a bad way. And also, her plans to pull apart the National Health Service and various other parts of the welfare state, that is going to be much harder now to do anything radical, because, okay, even if she keeps her whole party unified in their vote, this minority party, who also has to vote in favour of anything she does, they will have the public staring at them and going, I hold you personally responsible for what happens. And a lot of people crack under that sort of pressure. So honestly, in a lot of ways, I actually think, you know, with a lot of Western democracies are dominated by two parties, I honestly think there's a lot to be said for the government actually being a minority of seats who has to negotiate with some minor parties and say, look, okay, I'll make concessions for this and that, and then you'll support us, as opposed to someone who just steamrolls it through. And then prior to this election, that's what Theresa May could do, because she had a majority in the parliament, and now she can't. This is one of the ultimate political hold my beer and watch this moments, and it's ended badly. Could have been worse. It is pretty goddamn bad, and it is also funny to see some right-wing loudmouths on the internet, particularly the ones who aren't from England and clearly don't understand the English parliamentary system. They look and they see the number of seats the Tories won, the Conservatives, and then the number of seats Labour won, which is much less, and they go, ha! Suck it, communists! Apparently not realising this was a monumentally fucking bad result for the Conservatives. It could have been worse. If Labour had got many more seats and the Tories less, then it would have been much more likely that even if Labour didn't have a majority, enough minority parties would have said, look, we'll give you our pledge of support for you as a minority government. And honestly, Theresa May is so weakened by this, it's turned into such a bad decision on her part. She is going to be very lucky to hold on to the top job. She's declared she is. She's got the support of some of her ministers and, you know, gone to the Queen and said, you know, I'm going to form a minority government. But she will be on such thin ice. And if things start to fuck up for her, the divisions within her own party will soon open up a great big pit under her, and it'll be bye-bye Theresa. And also, honestly, if anything ever happens where they have to have by-elections in Tory seats, they will be under so much pressure, because if the Tories start falling apart and losing their whole strong and stable bullshit appearance, they are in danger of their minority becoming more of a minority and being much more under threat from the Labour Party. But yeah, that's the Tories, and my big hope is, well, A, this moderates the Tories and they behave more reasonably, but B, the Tony Blair acolytes in the Labour Party, the neoliberals, that they will shut the fuck up now, because ever since Jeremy Corbyn got elected leader of the Labour Party, there's been these conservatives who all love Tony Blair, who hate Corbyn, because they're not old school lefties like him. That's the traditional base of the Labour Party, but Tony Blair, he's a neoliberal, he's the new liberal, he's the, hey, I'm in the Labour Party, but you know who I like? Big business! And I don't hate Tony Blair, but I friggin' think all his supporters who spent the last year or so attacking Jeremy Corbyn are shitheads. The way you get elected leader in the Labour Party in England is all your party members, like the public, the voting public, anyone registered in the Labour Party, they get to vote on who's the parliamentary leader. So that's different. In Australia, there's no such influence. Basically, everyone who's elected to Parliament, the MPs, they sit down and say, okay, from within us, who do we want to be leader? So the situation that happened in the UK wouldn't happen in Australia, but it is the rules. And these Blair supporters, they spent ages trying to undermine the rules, undermine the votes. They put Corbyn through 2 votes and he convincingly won both. And they kept pushing this lie, he's unelectable. Apparently ignoring the fact that he got elected twice by the rank and file. The people who were going to vote Labour wanted him. And they had this bizarre thing going on where it's like, he's unelectable. Now this election comes along and Corbyn was brutally hammered by almost all the media. I mean, by far the worst was the fucking conservative tabloids. Like, they were despicable to the point, see, people say, what's your views on free speech? Like, in a vague general sense, I think it's good, but when people abuse it, particularly when media outlets abuse it and print blatant fucking lies and hyper-partisan bullshit instead of news, I think they should pay a price. I think they should be punished for doing that. I basically think, well, everyone involved in these fucking tabloids should be thrown into a big pit somewhere, and then the general public can just piss on them because that's all they're good for. They're not journalists, they're not responsible, they're fucking scum. But with all this constant anti-Corbyn barrage in the media, he still performed better than any Labour person's done in ages. And it's like, oh, wait, what a minute. It looks like your line about unelectable isn't true. Who knew? And I bet it's interesting, in the interviews, I've seen 2 Labour MPs interviewed who were both very anti-Corbyn, and it was put to them, well, you said he was unelectable, you were clearly wrong. And one of them straight out said, I said that, I was wrong. He did a great job and I was wrong. See, that's what you do. You own up when you fuck up and it's done. The other one just all ifed and ummed and ahed and prevaricated and went, well, you blah, 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 and talked like a fucking politician exactly in the way that pisses people off, completely oblivious to what a fucking idiot they are. See, that's why people don't like politicians, because they won't just say things. That's why, you know, one of the things that people liked about Trump, he tells it like it is. They seem to not be bothered that Trump is clearly, patently lying almost all the time, but he gives direct answers. They're direct lies, but they're direct. Which brings me, I think the other person having a fucked up week is Donald Trump. He won't admit it, and his supporters won't admit it. But of course, the culmination was the sacked FBI director, James Comey, giving testimony in the US. And the really interesting bit is there's open hearings and closed hearings. We only saw the open hearing, and there's going to be a closed hearing. And the things that Comey didn't answer, that said, I can't do this in an open setting, that's really telling. Because the things he did say were pretty good. Like when he point blank called Trump a liar. He said what Trump said is lies, pure and simple. That is, in political terms, that is pretty fucking hardcore. You just straight up said the President of the United States directly lied. Now, we all know that's true. We all know that Trump's been lying about this all along. But actually putting it on the line and saying that, that's pretty fucking hardcore. And of course, Trump in his usual blustery bullshit has said, no, he's lying. So, you know, Comey's lying. Comey says Trump's lying. Trump says Comey's lying. So, I mean, who do we believe? Because obviously one of them's lying. So, you know, we've got a choice of, well, you believe the lifetime law enforcement officer who served for a decade under presidents of both political persuasions, or, you know, do you believe the guy who still says ridiculous shit like Obama was born in Kenya? I don't know. One of them or the other, I wonder which one is actually lying. Because this will be humorous, because of course, in the closed hearings, where the big shit's gonna come out, because like when Comey was asked a question, like he did actually confirm that prior to all this shit happening with Trump was not under investigation. Then when he was pointedly asked, is Trump under investigation now? He said, I can't answer that in an open setting. Here's a tip. I think if the answer was no, he could have said that publicly. But so Comey has said Trump's lying and he's testifying under oath. Trump, not under oath, is saying Comey's lying. The fun thing would be when Trump gets questioned under oath, because it now seems impossible for Trump not to be questioned under oath, either just in front of a committee, or if we actually get into obstruction of justice hearings, impeachment hearings, that type of thing. It seems almost inevitable he will be questioned under oath. And outside of that, he's all blustery, no, Comey's lying, it's all good. But I think possibly lawyers will be whispering in his ear going, lying under oath is worse, okay? Because if what you did is going to come out, that's one thing, but if you also lie under oath, that will fucking seal your fate. Because the whole thing about, having inappropriate dealings with Russia, Trump could conceivably be found to have had inappropriate dealings with Russia, but a decision could be made. There's nothing to prosecute there. Yes, it happened, but there's nothing to prosecute. But if he lies under oath, if he lies in what's the word? Presentation. My brain just went blank on the right word. But if he lies to a Senate committee, to the Congress, to a court, that will fucking seal his fate. That is not just impeachment, a la Richard Nixon. That is a jailable offence. Now, Nixon never went to jail because Ford then pardoned him for his crimes. I'm just asking, really, if Trump goes down, because I still refuse to say when. Logic tells me it's when. Logic tells me Trump is so clearly corrupt, is so clearly outside the law that he's going down. But logic hasn't helped us up to this point. So I'm not going to go and say he's definitely going down. But if he goes down, and if it's a jailable offence, do you really think the next president, who will be Pence, if he's not implicated as well, do you really think he's going to pardon Trump? Because I honestly don't think he will. And that makes Trump the epitome of totally fucked up.